Ansel Adams was born in 1902 as an only child to wealthy Charles Hitchcock Adams and Olive Bray. They moved from New England to California, where his grandfather had created a lumber business that was prospering, and the family soon inherited after his death. In 1906, Adams was caught in an earthquake, causing him to fall and break his nose, leaving a pretty rough scar. Then the family lost their wealth in 1907, and Adams' father spent the rest of his life trying to regain it. With the father struggling to regain his fortune and his mother brooding over the money lost for most of her life, Adams' childhood was less than a healthy one. So he spent most of his time wandering the scenic area around his home. His father, however, at least remained a huge influence in his life, continued to encourage, develop, and support his son through all his endeavors, even through all their troubles. All of these factors did not help Adam's self-esteem, and with his genius it made it difficult for him to fit in with other kids at school. He was a hyperactive child whom often got sick, so he barely had any friends to speak of, and he was always in trouble at school. Due to the lack of success in his behavior in his school, he was taken out and homeschooled by his father and aunt. After some time, he was finally able to earn a diploma from the Miss Kate M. Wilkins private school. Even though Adams had a rough childhood, the most influential part of it was when he lived in the Golden Gate area. Almost every day he went hiking to enjoy the nature and take photographs with his camera his father gave him. Adams taught himself how to play the piano at a young age, and for a while it became his passion. In 1916, after his first trip to Yosemite National Park, he began really experimenting with his camera. He learned the darkroom, read photography material, joined some camera clubs, and began attending photography and art exhibits. He continued playing the piano for a living to pass time. That is until he realized that he could actually make money with his photography. Then the world opened up for him. His love for nature led him to Yosemite, where he not only met his wife, Virginia Best, who happened to be the daughter of Best's studio, but also where he became an activist for the wilderness. He worked his way up to becoming the keeper of the club's LeConte Memorial Lodge, and made friends with many of the club's leaders who were involved in the conservation movement. That is where he really became involved in saving these wilderness natural beauties. He wrote thousands of letters in support to newspapers, Sierra Club, Wilderness Society, colleagues, government peoples, and even politicians. His photography is what played the most influence on people, though, as it was so breathtaking you could not help but want to save it from being developed. He fought for new parks, against overbuilt highways, billboards, and the overall balance of the use of resources. He even wrote the president and got a meeting which saved and made a national forest. Adams was the only conservationist that could actually get a hold of the president just by picking up a phone. He pieced together all his photographs and went to Best's studio in 1916, and that is where he developed and sold most of his photography. It is also where he sold his very first photographs in and mostly of Yosemite Valley. In 1928, he married Virginia Best, who was later to inherit the studio after her father's death in 1935. Soon after, Adams published his first portfolio, Parmelian, Prince of the High Sierras, which was a huge success and led to many more commercial assignments. One of his most famous pieces, Monolith, the Face of Half Dome, was in there. It was between 1929 and 1942 that Adams' reputation was at its height. He expanded his horizons and began focusing more on detailed close-ups of mountains and other natural imagery. He published a lot of instructional books on photography at this point as well, which did really well for him. He did classes where he taught people how to be a photographer. And around the 1960s, the world's appreciation of photography as an art had blown all out. So Adams' images were in art galleries and museums around the world. During the 1970s, Adams devoted his time to the darkroom in order to maintain the demand for his work.
I can't verbalize on the internal meaning of pictures whatsoever. Some of my friends can at very mystical levels, but I prefer to say that if I feel something strongly, I would make a photograph that would be the equivalent of what I saw and felt. When I'm ready to make a photograph, I think I quite obviously see in my mind's eye something that is not literally there in the true meaning of the word. I'm interested in expressing something which is built up from within rather than just extracted from without.
His work never seemed to end, though. Adams worked for 18 plus hours a day and never took vacations, holidays, or even a day off unless he was sick. The man was a marvel up to his very last breath, which was on April 22nd, 1984, of a fatal heart attack. The president named a mountaintop after him soon after his death, a remarkable tribute. The best studio is known as the Ansel Adams Gallery and remains in the family still today. His greatest contribution and what he is most known for is making photography popular in America and his participation in saving the environment. Adams was a real artist, and he dedicated his life and devoted all of his time to photography. A real artist always puts their heart and soul into their art, and that is what makes real art so special. When Adams took a photo, he did not just press a button and shoot. He set up his old-style camera, then waited for the perfect moment. That moment when he felt something is when he took the picture, then went back to the dark room, even after developing on your own went out of style, and stayed in there until the images were perfect. Adams has left such an impression on me since I was a little girl, and his images bring back some lovely memories for me. The flower image is one of my favorites, probably because daisies are also my favorite flower. So it is no wonder when I look at this why it is so emotional for me. It reminds me of when I was a young girl picking flowers for my mother and looking for the perfect one. The image is perfect in every way, and the detail and reflection are breathtaking. Adams demonstrates the push-pull technique in this image, where the reflection is the foreground, the flower is the middle, and the tree is in the background, and the black is the farthest back. The main focus is on the flower and the reflection, yet you can see the detail of the tree and shadows behind it. The rest is shadowed out. It is the perfect image. There is something rare about his black and white images I do not know how to begin to explain, and that is but one reason Adams' work is known as couture. It is easy to categorize low art. It is more difficult to understand why it is so successful. The black and white image of the water and sky is just too much for words. The timing was absolutely perfect. When I look at a piece of work, I want it to make me feel something. Ansel Adams' photography makes me feel like floating on cloud 9, and it makes me feel as if I were in the moment with him. This is one of those images that make me feel like I am in heaven. The sheer beauty of it makes me get lost in the image, and I could stare at it for hours on end. Adams' images are high art, and this photograph is an example of that. The time it took him waiting for the perfect moment just shows how important it is. The image of the mountain in black and white is one of Ansel's favorite types of photos to take, and I can see why. The way the lighting hits the top of the mountain and the shadows fall beneath, even in the reflection off the water, are stunning. It is serene, relaxing, and emotional to see the world the way Ansel did. It is images like this that Ansel Adams has taught me to appreciate the beauty in nature. The color image is when Adams decided to try and experiment with color, even though he was drawn to black and white photography. Even with his experimenting, the images came out just as beautiful as all his others. I do not think there has been any other photographer that could match his talent and make me feel the way I do when I view this and all his photographs. It makes me step back in awe of the world around me. We are losing the natural beauties around us, and images are one of the few outlets we still have to help preserve the beauty of them. This image has beautiful oranges and rustic colors that reflect off the water too. The strong colors are only on the water and sky. The rest of the image has strong dark colors that contrast the bright ones. This is another great example of the push-pull technique Adams used. The first set of the rocks is the foreground, up close to the viewer. The second set is the middle ground. The land far back is the background, and the sky gives the impression it goes farthest back. It is clear in all of Adams' work that he goes through great detail to make every image perfect as it can be. Adams was a brilliant photographer, environmentalist, and artist of the Western Canyon.